Paul, what exactly did you expect to happen? Perhaps playing peekaboo with the ghosts is not going to make them go away.
If stairs that creak and distant shrieking keep you up at night, take a midnight drive and you'll survive by the projector light. You're desperate for a taste of horror, hungry for the hunt, and the late night double feature's got a seat for you in front. Stabbing, slashing, gnashing fangs abound, all wrapped up in a cheap mask made of rubber. Beasts that feast on terror by the pound, so think before you ask for extra butter. The day is done, the time has come to lay your body down. The late night double feature starting now.
It's just after midnight somewhere, so welcome to the Late Night Double Feature. I'm your host, Clive Sinclair, and it's Hell House LLC Trilogy night. So get your coffee ready. We're going to be going late into the night for a triple feature as we enjoy these 3 found footage movies, starting, of course, with Hell House LLC. In October of 2009, Alex Taylor was the owner of a small business called Hell House LLC, wherein his team set up prestigious haunted attractions. Their latest venture is restoring the Abaddon Hotel, a long-since abandoned inn on the edges of Abaddon, New York. And we learned that opening night did not go well, resulting in all but one of the team, Sarah, dead and several attendees injured or killed. Details are sketchy on what happened, until 5 years later, wherein Sarah gives a documentary film team a bunch of tapes that she and the other team had been recording as they set up the Hell House to help explain. Unfortunately, those tapes were just of a guy claiming to be a descendant of Frankenstein leading some people into the frozen north of Canada. The tapes actually contain footage of the team working and living in the house from August through opening night in October. Strange, frightening things happen as time goes on. Dark, shadowy figures appear in the backgrounds. A tune played on a piano that the cameraman, Paul, had done jokingly starts being played in the middle of the night, and a clown mannequin seems to move on its own. Sarah sleepwalks around and speaks in backwards talk. We also learn the history of the hotel, about a man named Andrew Tully who built it, and may have been the head of a cult who performed human sacrifices, using the guests for that purpose. While he was cleared of wrongdoing after showing records of the guests leaving, the reputation ruined his business, and he hanged himself in the dining room. Which only hurt his reputation more because he did it right in the middle of dinner service. Tragedy, really. Despite growing evidence of the supernatural in their midst, Alex refuses to shut down. Tony, one of the staffers, wants to quit, but is told off-screen by another staffer named Mac why they can't stop. Almost like they needed a sequel to explain that or something. Paul gets attacked by a ghost and becomes catatonic afterwards, right before opening night. Once opening night hits, we see in more detail what happened, mixing in the original opening night footage shown at the start, alongside the tapes Sarah brought in, one of the actors fleeing the basement after dark figures start attacking and killing people. However, while plenty are able to flee, the staff are not so lucky. The doors locking before they can exit. Sarah encourages the documentary team to go to the hotel themselves to investigate. They do so, but one of their teammates, Mitchell, fails to warn them as he continues looking through the footage that Sarah provided, revealing that Sarah was killed by Paul in the footage, who in turn slit his own throat. The documentary team enters the house, only to be attacked by Sarah and the dark figures to end the movie. The original Hell House LLC is a fine found footage movie. Not the best, but certainly an enjoyable outing in its own right. Its greatest strength is in the scares. Sometimes predictable ones, certainly, but well executed. They establish with the clown dummies that their heads don't move, so when we see the heads have moved, it's incredibly creepy. Although, this may be an odd question for a haunted house attraction, but why were they placing clown mannequins near the demonic sacrifice basement? Was the implication that the clowns were performing the human sacrifice? The best sequence is when they're testing out a strobe light-filled hallway and you can tell that things are moving in the background, including an additional figure showing up. They didn't even need the documentary portion to show off the stills afterwards. It's clear what happened, and it's legitimately frightening. Consequently, that's a slight issue with the movie. It's also serving as a faux documentary. The idea of a faux documentary framing device is perfectly fine, but it ends up raising questions about the editing of said documentary. Very occasionally, the found footage portions will be interrupted by interview portions, but the found footage portions run for so long that you forget this is also supposed to be a faux documentary, leading to the interview segments being a bit jarring. They're timed well enough so that they don't get in the way of the scary parts, but the showing of so much found footage also ends up creating an additional issue: padding. In universe, this is supposed to be a documentary showing off the found footage that was trying to make sense of what happened that night. But then why are they also showing the found footage that's there for character establishment and development? Why include Paul being skeevy about Sarah and her underwear? Why show the scene of Paul trying to hit on one of the actresses? Why show the characters just playing games and having fun? It makes sense if this was just straight found footage, showing the unedited bits of what happened, but as part of a documentary focusing strictly on trying to untangle what happened? Why so few interviews if this is supposed to be a documentary first? The movie is also not exactly rich on characterization. Paul is a horn dog, Mac is serious and a bit aggressive, Alex is dismissive, and Sarah is a woman. But then again, it's not supposed to be particularly deep. The movie is very much what its plot is about: a haunted house attraction. It's meant to give some spooks and scares, not dig too deeply into character backstories and arcs. It's there to make you jump for a moment and then move on to the next bit where hopefully you get another adrenaline rush from the thing that shouts boo. It's also fun to see the behind the scenes of assembling a haunted attraction like this. The characters coming up with ideas like a barman shouting at the attendees, or how to position mannequins and lighting for maximum effect. It may not be the most sophisticated of haunted houses out there, but it's fun in the same way people shopping through a Spirit Halloween for ideas to put on their house is fun. Don't come into the film expecting deep philosophical discussions about the nature of humanity or something. Come into it to get some fun frights. There might also be some dissatisfaction that there are a lot of unanswered questions. Why did Tony decide to stay? What was the true nature of the supernatural threat? Was it really connected to Andrew Tully? How convenient, then, that there are sequels. Hell House LLC 2, The Abaddon Hotel, takes place 2 years after the first movie, which itself exists in-universe as the documentary that was being made in it, completed by Mitchell Cavanaugh, the only survivor of the documentary team. In the intermediate time, The Abaddon Hotel has become something of a spot for very stupid people and teenagers to try to break into and record themselves running around before they're eventually killed and their phones are used to try to lure more people inside. Which does make one wonder how exactly Mitchell recovered the footage from the end of the first movie, when everyone who enters this place ends up dead. Speaking of Mitchell, the movie is split into 2 alternating stories involving him. The first is him being interviewed on Morning Mysteries, a talk show where he discusses the documentary. Alongside him is Arnold Tasselman, an Abaddon town official who investigated the original Hell House incident, plus is currently suing Mitchell to get the movie off the market, claiming it's harming the town, and Brock Davies, a supposed psychic medium who had helped the police in several cases. The other story involves some investigative journalists, Molly, Jessica, and their cameraman David, who hire Mitchell to guide them, along with Brock Davies, through the house to try to investigate what really happened. They have a lead on Andrew Tully's possible cult connections and think there's evidence in a spot the police wouldn't have investigated. And naturally, the one person who knows more than anyone else how dangerous it is because he released a full documentary about it wherein his friends died is more than happy to help. Brock Davies comes along with them as he arrogantly claims that he'll be able to help the restless spirits. It goes about as well for him as you would expect, though strangely, when he asks the spirit if he's talking to Tully or his cult, they say no. Even stranger, there's a typo, misspelling anomaly, and it should be anomalies plural. Ghosts can't spell, it would seem. In the basement, they find the evidence they were looking for, But the ghosts make their presence known, moving the clown mannequin, shutting and locking doors, and generally making it clear they will not be leaving. In the morning show segment, we learn that Alex from the first movie wasn't even supposed to be using the Abaddon Hotel. Officials couldn't bar him from doing so, suggested alternate sites, but for some reason, he was determined to use that hotel in particular. In turn, it's revealed that the Hell House business was not doing very well, probably the very reason given to keep Tony from quitting. And it seems that Alex had some satanic drawings and ramblings in his journal. Mitchell believes that there's a presence in the hotel that specifically brought Alex there and continues to do so. A domino effect. I like to imagine it's just like a line of dead bodies falling on top of each other one after another. When Mitchell and the investigative reporters are stuck in a room, having been chased there by a ghost, they review the tapes found in the basement. One features Alex at the hotel months before he was supposed to have first been there, making a deal with an unseen person to use the Abaddon in the hopes of salvaging his business. Eventually, the group is captured by the ghosts. Once the morning show segment ends, the host mentioning that a wealthy entrepreneur named Russell Wynn has been receiving footage about what happened at the hotel, everyone leaves. But the host is informed that Arnold Tasselman won't be able to make the interview, despite just being there. Man, politicians, they just lie about everything, am I right? No, as the footage reveals, it was not Tasselman who was interviewed, but Andrew Tully. Tully, flanked by the ghosts of Alex and Mac, explains that he wants to keep bringing people into the hotel. He says that he found the gateway to hell here, and that Mitchell must choose one of the reporters to leave, to keep the dominoes falling, to bring more souls to the hotel and the Lake of Fire. Mitchell chooses Jessica, but like Sarah, she has become a ghost and servant of the hotel as well, and she encourages the police to go to it. Hell House LLC 2 is better than the first movie in a lot of ways, particularly in how it approaches being a faux documentary. While the first movie had long stretches of time where the found footage segments just played out, this is paced better, separating the found footage scenes with the morning show, as well as jumping around in the timeline a bit. We see Jessica get picked up by the police, as well as the short segments of people entering the hotel and meeting grisly fates. In fact, the addition of those segments is wonderful for world building. The incident at the Abaddon Hotel is not just forgotten about by the general public, but people are frequently entering it for any number of reasons and helping build its legend. It also goes to show that even with what seems to be incontrovertible evidence of the supernatural, people still believe it's a hoax. And that's just going to be the case in a world where special effects, even cheap ones, can accomplish all the amazing things we see in found footage movies. The best of the segments is probably that of a hitchhiker who is picked up by some vloggers and wants to be dropped off at the Abaddon. Apparently one of the original victims of the 2009 Hell House incident who had hitchhiked to the opening. The ghostly hitchhiker is already a classic ghost story, but used here to great effect when the vloggers try to go in after her and find her undead form waiting for them. Indeed, the scares remain as fun as the first, especially as the clown mannequin is once more used to great effect. It has slight movements, an appearance in the strobe light hallway, and just in general, the clown acts as the unofficial mascot of these movies, even though it's not supposed to be about evil clowns. And yet, an evil clown is also a staple of any Halloween store decoration, adding to the atmosphere of a haunted house attraction. Throughout the film, we also see brief flashes to the first movie, which makes sense with the faux documentary presentation. Deliberate edits to highlight memorable locations and people from the first movie. And indeed, kudos for bringing back the original actors for a lot of this. Even Alice Balke as Diane, the interviewer from the first movie, who only comes back as a disfigured ghost in one scene. Still, the movie is not without its flaws. The reveal of Tully and the exposition dump that follows could have been handled better. For several minutes, Tully just rambles and raves and exposits about his plans and intentions, and the movie is ground to a halt. Admittedly, they try to keep things interesting by moving the camera around and occasionally modifying his voice, but it's still one guy talking for a while, and it's just not that compelling. It feels at odds with the sort of movie this is and the types of scares they have in it. It feels like it's trying to go for Brad Dourif's performance in Exorcist 3, but not quite hitting the mark. In turn, we have some head-scratching points that are raised, but are not explained, not even in the third movie. One of the people who broke into the hotel apparently had played the same piano tune as Paul had made in 1997 as a child, even briefly getting possessed by Tully, but why or how this was done is never explained. It's brought up that the town of Abaddon seems to be very determined to keep things a hush-hush about the place. Gag orders and legal action threatened. Everyone involved told to just not talk about it. But why? There's nothing to suggest the police or local government were involved in the cult or the haunted shenanigans, so why is it that they needed to be so thoroughly quiet about the whole thing? Now, of course, they wouldn't claim that ghosts are responsible, but the level of secrecy around it is never explored. And then there's Brock Davies' improvised Ouija board. The ghost claims that they're unconnected to Andrew Tully, yet Tully is indeed behind things, so why bother lying about that? What was the point in Tully appearing on the morning show at all, especially if he wanted more people to go out to the hotel? None of these questions ruin the movie, of course, and it's arguably the best movie of the trilogy. While we don't have an arc for many of the characters, there's definitely a broader range of emotions and motivations present. Molly, frightened by the hotel and never wanting to enter, and thus being the most vulnerable to attack. Mitchell's determination to find out what happened to his friends, even though he knows the dangers of the hotel. Jessica's disbelief in the supernatural, but being driven to find the truth. Even David the cameraman gets some characterization by being very protective of Molly. And then, of course, our villain, Andrew Tully, now revealed and very much happy to play the role of villain. Like the first movie, nothing is too deep, and this movie arguably has the least amount of plot of the three, but it's also the best overall in what it's trying to accomplish. But let's see what works so well, or what works against the final movie of the evening, or early morning, depending on how late night you are watching this, with Hell House LLC 3, Lake of Fire. Released a year later as a Shudder exclusive, my copy was from Amazon Prime. The third film explains that the Abaddon Hotel was finally scheduled to be demolished, only to be saved by the rich entrepreneur mentioned near the end of the last movie, Russell Wynn. Russell is planning on using the Abaddon to present an immersive play version of the story of Faust called Insomnia. Fixing up the hotel is part of the process. A documentary team from Morning Mysteries, led by Vanessa Shepard, follows the cast and crew around as they work, making interviews and recording everything they can. And of course, the first movie still exists in universe.
I don't know, it seemed like one of those silly found footage films, and it's not really my thing.
Lady, I've watched a lot of found footage movies. A lot. Trust me, this is not one of the silly ones. It soon revealed that, like the Hell House incident a decade earlier, things did not go well for the opening night of Insomnia. A shocking revelation for you all, I know. And thus we enter the movie properly, and we get to see the Abaddon get transformed into its new decor. Easily comparable to the old one, because this movie really enjoys doing brief flashbacks to the other two films to show off how it used to look. The actors are given cameras to record behind-the-scenes footage as well. Russell, we learn, has also been consulting with a local priest, who tells Vanessa about the idea of an earthly portal to hell guarded by the demon Abaddon, but that only an angel could close that portal. Soon, of course, supernatural events begin to plague the set. Russell seems to know more than he's letting on, giving instructions for no one in the cast to be alone in the hotel at any point. No one's staying there overnight, paying the actors exorbitant wages to be there while cutting ticket prices and being mysterious around his crew. We learn that he was in a car crash in 2008 where he nearly died and has been acting differently since then. And that's when we find out he decided to be the new Jigsaw. After Vanessa sees the ghost of Jessica in the hotel, she begins digging deeper into what Russell is doing. She discovers that he has the footage of the second movie, obviously not released yet as the second documentary in universe. Russell discourages Vanessa from coming to opening night, but won't explain why. Going back to the priest, she gets him to admit that Russell is planning on liquidating his entire fortune and having the priest distribute it to appropriate charities. She breaks the story to try to get the show shut down, but it fails. And we soon see that there's a more interesting story, namely that Russell has been in the background of footage relating to both Alex's group and Jessica's initial decision to hire Mitchell. It's always nice when extras get upgraded to main character. Opening night of Insomnia occurs and things do not go off to a good start, especially with the clown mannequin appearing out of nowhere and Andrew Tully appearing in a room to speak to Russell.
Brilliant move with the cameras. We taped everything, too, when we first opened this place.
Unfortunately, that also included extended scenes of Andrew Tully on the toilet. It seems that, like Faust, Russell made some sort of deal with Tully, and he goes on the attack, killing one of the actors and unleashing the dark figures upon the crowd to murder them. However, unlike with Hell House, this time the dark figures even swarm out of the house to attack those waiting and fleeing. Vanessa is dragged into the basement and killed, but it seems Russell had another agenda in mind as he attacks Tully. CGI effects break out, and the Abaddon Hotel is finally burned down. And yet, everyone survives save for Russell, all laid out in the cornfield next to the hotel safely. Vanessa speculates that in Russell's car crash, he actually did die, but came back as some sort of angel to finally close Tully's gate. In the wake of these events, all the tapes concerning the second movie are found in Russell's possessions, but there's one additional tape that's leaving people confused, that of Alex's Hell House group, all alive inside the hotel after what happened, along with Russell, who informs them that they're sadly trapped there because the hotel took them. As a finale to all of Hell House LLC, the third movie works, but it's also the weakest film of the trilogy. There are noticeably less scares in the movie. Those scares work for the most part, but one in particular seemed to be played for comedy, and they're so spread out that it barely feels like a horror movie. The callbacks to the other movies can get kind of annoying at times, reminiscent of when Matrix Resurrections did the same thing. Just flashes to the other two movies to remind the audience of the characters and locales. It's effective only once. When one of the Insomnia actors is going through the empty bar, we get some quick flashes of the first movie, then she turns the camera towards herself, and we see the ghosts of the original film's cast behind her. But it could be argued that it wasn't necessary at all to have those flashes of the first film. Speaking of that actress and scares, the clown mannequin once again gets what's probably the most effective in the film. When the actress is dared to go and touch one of the clowns on the nose, and the head turns towards her, and more. It is rightfully terrifying and suspenseful. Mind you, that does invite a big question. If they were moving out all the other Hell House stuff from the interiors, why did they leave the clown mannequins in the basement? The loss of the Hell House trappings also hurts the film. With the first movie, it felt like you were truly in a haunted house attraction. In the second, the haunted house attraction trappings were now even more unnerving because of everything being abandoned and disused. But here, it's all been cleared out and everything given a new coat of paint. So even the elements that are familiar from the other two films aren't scary like they should. The atmosphere isn't there. Tully's plan in this one is also a bit head-scratching. Not the idea of bringing in more souls to harvest in some mass murder, but rather that he keeps sabotaging that effort. Throughout the film, the ghosts that are supposed to be under his command keep screwing with the Insomnia crew, haunting them or attacking them. It made sense in the second movie when they were just attacking anybody who entered the hotel, but here they're supposed to be waiting to get as many bodies in the place as possible. By attacking people beforehand and sabotaging the Insomnia performance, it just increases the chances of it getting delayed or cancelled. Or does Tully not have any direct control over the other ghosts and he's just doing a poor job of micromanaging them? While the film is light on scares, it does compensate by having the most characterization present, particularly towards our two main leads, Vanessa and Russell. Vanessa has the closest of what we could call an arc in these movies. She starts off as insecure and frightened because of only recently being made the host of Morning Mysteries, fearful of coming across as weak and justifying sexist assumptions about her, only decide to risk her journalistic career in the hopes of saving people from a slaughter by leaking the info about Russell's planned liquidation of his assets. In addition, she's explicitly an atheist earlier in the film, but the encounter with the supernatural, and Russell's miracle of saving her and everyone else in the hotel, has changed that. It is an interesting dynamic not often explored in supernatural movies involving hell and demons, that heaven might have its own agents trying to help people, as is the case with Russell. Russell is not necessarily a character about redemption, but his elaborate plan to stop Tully and end the evil of the Abaddon at the cost of his soul's freedom shows a nobility and sacrifice few would probably be willing to make. Instead, as alluded to with its presence in the movie, it's a more original take on the Faustian bargain. While the traditional devil deal is an attempt to gain knowledge or power, the bargain here is a ruse, merely the method by which Russell can stop a great evil while condemning himself to limbo. You know it's a work of fiction because it's about a rich guy giving away all his money and then sacrificing himself to stop evil. It's a bit more subtle, but the self-sacrifice thing to allude to Jesus has another moment in the film. The night before the performance, when Russell goes out to dinner with the others, he is only able to get bread, which is distributed to everyone else. And the whole scene is like a close-up on the Last Supper. I give the film points for not zooming out to make the reference that explicit. Still, despite these more interesting aspects, we come to these movies for horror, and it's a shame that the final film in the trilogy just does not deliver on horror as much as it should. But while the film may not give us scares, I can always give you Clive Sinclair's Healthier Living Through Horror, where the movies give us advice on how to lead more prosperous lives. For the first film, when playing the piano with ghosts, make sure you teach them something more fun than a minor key dirge. Ghosts may not attack you if you keep their spirits up. Also, when setting up a haunted attraction, place your scary clowns next to satanic symbols. They go together like peanut butter and chocolate. For the second film, when you're conducting interviews with city officials, make sure you call their phone before you start recording. The person you're talking to may in fact be a satanic cult leader back from the dead, or just a really good impersonator. Also, when visiting haunted houses in search of tapes and documents, make sure you bring a big duffel bag that you can just throw stuff into and leave. That way you're not lingering around for the ghosts to attack you. And for the final film, if you do suddenly die and go to heaven, try to strike a deal with God to come back and do some good. Sure, you might be forsaking heaven, but you also might get an extra decade to stalk people who try to go inside haunted houses. And that's the American dream right there. And finally, a basic tip but a good one: motorized turntables make for excellent tripods. And now it's time to spin the wheel and see what we'll be looking at in August. When we return, it's House on Haunted Hill Night. Until then, I'm Clive Sinclair, and I'll see you all again when it's just after midnight somewhere.
I heard it was a killer hunt.
Okay, seriously? How long have you been waiting to say that line?
Had to wait to get it on camera.